Deadly violence near the presidential palace in Egypt. The opposition says 2 people have been killed in clashes between supporters and opponents of the president. We can now talk again to RT's Tom Barton, who's right there in the crowd. So, Tom, what is going on near the palace now? Any sign of the clashes calming down?
No, they're not, Bill. Outside the palace where we are at the moment, Muslim Brotherhood supporters are currently in control of this ground, as it were. An enormous crowd of theirs has swept around the side of the palace walls, and they have effectively claimed it for Mohamed Morsi, who they support. Earlier on, that was not the case. There had been a small protest camp outside the walls of Morsi's palace, manned by anti-Mohammed protesters. They were the remnants of a large protest, probably similar size to this, yesterday evening, and they were chanting against Mohamed Morsi. But today, the last of their supporters, who had vowed that they were going to camp out, were chased out of their camp by the Muslim Brotherhood and pro-Morsi supporters in a running battle that has escalated as more protesters arrive from both sides. In the end, though, the sheer weight of numbers of Mohamed Morsi supporters pushed the opposition protesters back into some of the nearby streets, where a ferocious battle is ensuing, involving crowds throwing stones over a short distance between the two crowds, an absolute hail of stones flying between the two sides there. Also Molotov cocktails between the two sides, both sides chanting and busily tearing up the pavements to provide themselves with more ammunition. We arrived to see an absolute scene of pandemonium. Some of the shop fronts nearby had been set on fire. The nearby film crews who'd been filming on top of some cars were just trying to drive their cars through the crowds to get out as fast as they could, because they hadn't been able to respond before the violence had swept over them as well. The first police car we've just seen a few minutes ago pass by. We're not quite sure whether that was to try and break things up. Until then, for hours now, there has been absolutely no police involvement at all. This situation has really deteriorated quite fast. Injuries streaming back from both sides, with head and other injuries from the flying stones. And this is these political divisions writ large and written violently on the streets of Cairo.
And Tom, despite this surge of violence, is there any sign a political solution to the crisis could be possible?
Well, Bill, both sides still talking, many people on both sides, of wanting a reasonable dialogue. But it seems that's as far as it goes, really now. Both sides very firmly entrenched in the corridors of power as well. Egypt's top judges, not all of them, but many of them, firmly opposed not only to Morsi's declaration the other week, granting himself power above all oversight, including from the judges themselves and their supporters, but also on the Muslim Brotherhood side and the Constituent Assembly, which has been is dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood, has been trying to draw up Egypt's new draft constitution and forced that through in a long overnight session recently. Too hasty, say the opposition, too Islamist, and it doesn't provide enough rights for Egypt's minorities and women in Egypt as well. The Muslim Brotherhood contends that's not the case. This referendum on it, when it must be put to the people, must go ahead. The opposition says absolutely not. It should never have got this far in the first place. We just don't know whether that referendum will go ahead, especially with fighting like this. It was a constitutional crisis, and it is still. But this is the fear of people being written large on the streets, that those political divisions are going to go much deeper and that this violence could become worse.
Tom, thanks a lot. Tom Barton live from near the presidential palace in Cairo.